Galactic Standard Date. Year 11356. Day 93. Sol Standard Date 4th of the 5th, 3267. Basilisk was walking through the Imperial Gardens with Amaranth attached to his back when he got a call from Aurelius.
Aurelius, what has happened?
Aurelius cleared his throat and nervously asked, My lord, I wish to ask you whether or not you trust me. Despite the fact that I am your second in command, you keep me in the dark on so many seemingly crucial details. If I am not trusted, then I would like to know why, so that I can improve and be worthy of your trust, my lord, he said, sounding sad. Basilisk just blinked a little and ran over his time with Aurelius in his head before realizing why Aurelius would actually be worried. After a solid minute of silence, Basilisk finally responded.
I was not aware of how my actions seemed to you, Aurelius. However, in hindsight, I can see where you would start thinking you are not fully trusted. You have my apologies for that. I fully trust you, or I would not have chosen you for the position of Primarch in the first place. I apologize for brushing off your questions. There is a lot of information that I take for granted as normal that would not be normal for you. Ask any question of me right now, and I will answer truthfully as a show of my trust.
Aurelius let out the breath he had been holding as Basilisk finally spoke. He listened with rapt attention, searching for any indication that Basilisk was trying to brush him off without explicitly doing so. What he wasn't expecting was the ask any question bit, especially after the incident with Jeff. Aurelius thought about it for a moment, and there was a question that burned at the forefront of his mind more than anything else. Jeff. I want to know about Jeff. He seems to be incredibly important, and you had explicitly asked me to leave that subject alone before. He is the greatest enigma in my mind.
Basilisk sighed internally as Aurelius asked about Jeff. I guess I've had this one coming. Well, I guess I should tell you his actual identity first off. He is the last remaining man from the Spec Ops unit I led before the Azarians. You would know his name, Thomas Reed, the first Primarch. He never died, he just didn't want a position in the limelight. He requested that we fake his death and change his appearance so that he could do work for me in the shadows. You don't work for 67 years in complete secrecy as a shadow, and then get dumped into a limelight position and remain happy, I suppose. I honoured his decision and set him to guard duty of the person who was most important to me. Now you know his identity, is there anything else you want to know about Jeff?
Aurelius was staring at his desk, wide-eyed and jaw dropped. The Thomas Reed was not only still alive, but had also been in his presence for literal days, and he hadn't a fucking clue. Tears welled up in his eyes. Thomas was a legendary figure among mankind. He was literally second only to the Emperor himself. His loss had sent ripples throughout the entire Empire. Billions had mourned the loss of one of the greatest men to ever live, yet he wasn't dead. Aurelius didn't know whether he felt happy or angry with the situation. Why? He was a cornerstone of the Empire. You couldn't have just told us he was retiring? There were parades mourning his passing. Whole planets of people mourned. What the actual fuck? He screamed, and slammed his fist into his desk, ripping through the oak as if it were paper. Basilisk looked down at the marble pathway he was standing on, then around him at the gardens. Slowly taken in the sights as a melancholy took over him. I had never intended for it to become like that. Had I known that he would end up disliking his position so much, I never would have asked him to take on the job. When I came back from the Vale, there were only 3 people left in the entire universe that I knew. Catherine and Jeff, of course. There was also someone who you have probably not heard of. His name was Dimitri. Catherine and Dimitri couldn't be held out in front of the entire populace for their own safety. There were simply too many fractal states, cults, terrorists, etc. for a few centuries. The only one I could trust, and bring out into the open, was Jeff. My thought process was simply that no man could kill him easily. I know I can trust him, and he won't end up as a fanatic. Basilisk paused for a moment, and stared out at the palace before continuing. I had him upgraded to specs that would be enough to deal me some damage if I wasn't careful, and called it good. I never took into consideration how this would affect his mental health. He couldn't handle the fame. He wanted out. All the way out. But only out of the light. He still wanted to help me, despite my ruining his life. He was like a brother to me. I just tossed him to the wolves, so I decided to take responsibility, and whole-ass the job rather than half-ass it. He was never supposed to have anyone know about him ever again, so I fully expect you to keep this to yourself. Aurelius took all of what he had just learned in, and sat in silence. He watched as the Nana slowly repaired the desk he had blown a hole clean through in silence for a moment, before responding. I apologize for my brashness, my lord. I will keep the secret on pain of death. Thank you, he said, as he cut the connection. Aurelius swiveled his chair in circles as he lay back, pondering on all the things he had just learned. There was so much he didn't know, but he could learn the rest later. He couldn't believe how sad Basilisk had sounded as he talked about Thomas. Jeff. Aurelius felt as though he had wounded his own hero. He hadn't known the circumstances, but that was the issue. This had been unavoidable, but hopefully the rest he needed to learn wouldn't be so heavy.